Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2023 wrestling sports drama film, The Iron Claw. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Brock for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would personally like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both will be in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, the Iron Claw, to me, when I first saw the trailer, it really surprised me because I had always felt that the Von Erich story could make for a compelling and genuinely phenomenal film if it was done the right way. And the trailer really did make it seem like they might have done it. And then I saw the film in the theater. I actually saw it the same day that I saw Night Swim. And while that film was drowning in just mediocrity and despair, The Iron Claw was a win. And it's definitely up there for me when it comes to one of my favorite films from last year, 2023, and just one of my favorite wrestling films in general. It was that good. Now, the film is directed by Sean Durkin, who also wrote the film. And the direction, to me, it's really a film that has this very photorealistic vibe to it. Almost like you're looking at a old Polaroid from like the late 70s or early 80s. Like it has this kind of look to it. And I would honestly be shocked if it wasn't shot on film. And it just has this kind of look to it that really does play into the throwback nature of the film. And I just love the way that he shoots so many elements of this movie. The scenes in the wrestling ring, just the scenes that showcase the patrons and the ticket goers hanging out outside the Coliseum and then going in and getting their seats, and just the fact that he was willing to really show all aspects of wrestling. You know, not just the theatrics in the ring, but also the theatrics outside of it, and also show a lot of very deeply human elements uh featuring the Von Erich family. And it's one of those things where you really get into the film. It becomes so much more immersive because of the way that it's shot. When it comes to the wrestling scenes, it feels like you're in there, you're in the ring along with the wrestlers. And when it comes to the scenes that are dealing with some very intense emotions and tragedy, you're also right there along with uh, the Von Erichs, with Kevin. And it just makes things so much more personal. And I definitely do feel that that is the right approach for this film. It does lead to a lot of shots in the movie that aren't really full of a lot of flair. Um, there's not really a huge amount of camera angles that are on display or pans and zooms all the time. A lot of it is just trying to be authentic, trying to be almost like a documentary at times, like a day in the life kind of thing. And I think it works. I do. And it still has a certain style to it though. There is still a little bit of flair despite the fact that it is a very grounded film visually. Now, the screenplay by Sean Durkin, it was a pretty tall task to condense the story of the Von Erichs into a 2.5 hour movie. And in order to do that, he had to take some creative liberty. He left out a brother, which I can understand why some people are disappointed about that. That this whole other brother was not included in the movie. Chris Von Erich. Because according to Durkin, it was one more tragedy that the film couldn't really withstand. And I don't necessarily agree with that. It's based on a true story, so you're trying to be as accurate to what happened as possible. And for the most part, except for maybe a few things here and there, it is fairly accurate, especially for a biopic, so to speak. But leaving that out, it was, in my opinion, a bit of an oversight, to say the least. And I really think that it is something that you could have still had in the movie. It just would have been a little bit longer. And that's fine because, I mean, you could have tacked on an extra 15-20 minutes, and I don't think it really would have affected uh, the pacing that much. And having that extra story with Chris, I think that can make it even more emotionally resonant, possibly. And it already is a very emotionally powerful and genuinely devastating film, the way that it is. I think it's one of those things like if you can take all the emotion that this film throws at you, then you could take another round with Chris. But they decided not to go that route. But other than that, I really liked this screenplay. I thought this script did a really good job establishing the Von Erichs as a family and really showing the bond between the brothers and also showing other bonds that form along the way. The bond between Kevin Von Erich and his soon to be wife and the mother of his child, uh, Pam, and a lot of other sort of dynamics that are created based around the life of being a wrestler. And it was refreshing to see a wrestling movie that was no holds barred in a way that was very realistic. It showed the damage that the wrestlers went through, whether it was physical, emotional, or both. And it really did a remarkable job making you sympathetic towards, at the very least, Kevin and his brothers, not necessarily his father. He comes across as a total manipulative dictator at times in this, but you get the vibe that he still loves his sons and he cares about them and wants the best for them, but he's just too obsessed with this goal of being a champion that he's not able to really see anything else. So it blinds him. It prevents him from really truly loving his sons deeply and in a very meaningful way, because it really does seem like he loves the idea of his sons winning and becoming champions more than he actually loves the idea of loving them as sons and not as wrestlers, just as his sons, as members of his family and as his own flesh and blood. And it does create for a very compelling antagonist in a lot of ways. Like, you genuinely do root for the Von Erichs. You want them to have success, but at the same time, you see the price of that. You see the price of that pursuit of success, that pursuit of winning, and how it can be devastating in its own way. I think the Von Erich curse, in a lot of ways, to me, is really tied to Fritz. It's tied to his relentless pursuit of winning and how that puts so much pressure on his sons. And it led to a lot of problems in the ring and outside of it. And it goes for the jugular, and it really goes for a clothesline and knocks you flat on the canvas. And if you're not emotionally prepared for this movie, it can really leave a number on you, because it's that kind of film where just so many things just spiral so quickly out of control, and just so many misfortunate events just pile on top of one another, and it just becomes a just catastrophic series of events. It's just a really solid script in a lot of ways, in terms of just building so many of these key elements when it comes to really telling this story in a very poignant way. And a lot of it's very character heavy, because it has to be. You have to do that, because otherwise a lot of these devastating events are not really going to carry as much weight if you don't get to know these characters that well. And I do like that it's not just the Von Erich brothers that are a focus, but it's also the parents, and it's also Kevin's wife. And I really love the dynamic and the relationship that forms between those two, between Kevin and Pam. I thought it was just really sweet and charming. You also have some other elements that are a lot of fun if you're a fan of wrestling, where you get to see some familiar names, wrestling with the Von Erichs, like Bruiser Brody, and what's Harley Race. Took me a bit. Yeah, Harley Race, Ric Flair. Although I will be honest, the Ric Flair a bit was a miss, but that had nothing to do with the way that it was written. It was the way that it was cast, and I'll get to that when I talk about the cast for the film. But yeah, it's just a movie that, yeah, I would say that I would have liked to, like I said, I would have liked to have seen the screenplay actually talk about Chris, tell his story as well. And to be honest, I would have liked to have seen more of Kerry Von Erich in WWE or WWF at the time, or maybe some of that match where he won the title. I get what the director and what the writer was trying to do with that, but I feel that whole moment, it was almost like it was building up to something, and then it builds up to this big moment, and then it just doesn't really amount to much of anything. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. Is that it's supposed to be this this jarring juxtaposition of Carrie being champion, but the same night he's not really. It isn't something that really has like fulfilled his life or been this grand big moment for him. And He then goes on the bike ride and gets hurt and loses his foot. Um, that's not historically accurate in terms of how things actually happened. There was a lot of months in between the accident, but I get why some creative liberties were taken there in terms of trying to reveal what happened to him. But I just feel like if you're not going to show a lot of the match, at least show Fritz's reaction, because that was his whole thing. Like, he was pushing his boys to be champions, and he won. And like, all you see is Carrie with one of his brothers late at night with the belt. You don't really see the father's reaction that much, or at least it doesn't really resonate that strongly if it is there. I mean, if you're going to have that kind of juxtaposition, then maybe you could have the stark contrast of the father being just jazzed and just unbelievably ecstatic about his son being the champion and being so proud of him, and in a lot of ways reveling in his victory as if it were his own. And then you got Carrie just not really anywhere near as enthusiastic or as excited about it, happy to win, but it's not like it was a goal that was fulfilled. You really do get the sense that he would have rather have competed in the Olympics and won a gold medal. That would have been more rewarding for him personally than winning this title. Didn't really mean as much to him as it did to his father. But that isn't something that's really that clear because of the way that that particular part of the film is written. And that would make the whole bit where he gets hurt and he loses a foot even more sad, because this happens right after he reaches a peak, but it's not necessarily something that he really, really, really wanted more than anything. And the price of that is something so severe. But that's not what Sean decided to do. But other than little stuff like that, it is a really strong screenplay. I definitely want to mention one more thing when it comes to this script, and it's just how well Sean writes the tragedies that befall the Von Erich family. How he balances them out in ways where it doesn't seem like it's exploitative. It really could have been if it was handled poorly, but that's not the case here. And just the way that things start off a little slow, a little small. You hear that the younger brother Jack Jr. died when he was a kid. I mean, who he would have been the older brother actually, because he was the first Von Erich kid. So their older brother, he died tragically. So you have this sort of sense that something is awry, something is off about this family, and things just gradually build and build, and then they just continue to build until it becomes this just explosion of grief and trauma. And I just think the way that the script just handled all of that was genuinely brilliant, and just so captivating, but at the same time genuinely horrifying because of the way that the story was set up from Kevin's perspective. Because just think about that. For anyone to lose that many people so close to you in such a consecutive fashion, I mean, that's just not one gut punch. That's multiple gut punches. That's so many gut punches that you might not even have a gut left. Like a gut punches that are so hard that it punches right through your stomach and out your back, or goes right into your stomach, and then the hand goes in and grabs your heart and rips it out and throws it on the ground. Like it's that kind of intensity, and I really do feel that Sean handled that so well. And it's a balance, and it's kind of a high wire act in some ways in terms of handling that in a way that's respectful, but also still able to reach a peak emotionally. And it's not easy. I've seen a lot of dramas. I've seen a lot of films that have tried to do this kind of thing, this kind of dance in the ring, so to speak, with these tragedies in someone's personal life or a family's life. And there are times where it just comes across as melodramatic, and it just comes across as something that is just not very realistic and doesn't have that rawness to it. And this script has that, and then some. And there's one line in particular, one moment in particular that got me really choked up, even made me shed tears. And when a film can do that, when a screenplay can evoke those kind of emotions out of you, it's a really top-notch winning script. And it's a moment at the end, I'm getting kind of choked up a little bit thinking about it, where Kevin, he's he's distraught and he's emotional and he's crying because of everything that's happened, and due to, the loss of his brothers, and his own children, his sons, see that, and they ask their dad, why are you so sad? Why are you crying, daddy? And Kevin says, I used to be a brother. And that was just a really simple but very powerful line. And it was actually a real quote that Kevin said. And that just shows the attention to detail and the respect that Sean had for the Von Erich story and for the family, to have a moment, like to have that quote that wasn't necessarily said in that context, but to utilize it in that way really was something that, to me, it represents the core, the crux of this story. It's about loss, but it's also about perseverance. Now, as strong as the script and the direction is, this film wouldn't be anywhere near as efficient or as much of a win as it is without its cast. I mean, other than the guy who played Ric Flair, this cast is great. This is A tier cast. You've got Zac Efron, who flies off the top rope and gets a pinfall and just delivers in triumphant fashion as Kevin Von Erich, with an excellent, deeply nuanced, just very strong and open performance. And what I mean by open is he plays Kevin as a man who is an open book. He shows his emotions. He not only is a man who's strong physically, but he's also strong emotionally. And you see that throughout the film. And you see how he builds these other muscles that are just about as important to him in his life. In fact, maybe even more important than his physical muscles, considering everything that his character was put through. And the fact that Zac Efron was robbed by the Academy is just mind blowing to me. How did he not get nominated for Best Actor? How did he get nominated? How did he not get nominated? See, I can't even put words together in a straight fashion because I'm so flabbergasted about it. And not only that, how in the hell did this not get nominated at all? Like, really? This didn't get a single Oscar nomination in any category. That's just unbelievable to me. But yeah, I highly recommend this film, even if you're not even a fan of wrestling, just for Zac Efron's performance. It's just a triumphant performance and easily his best performance to date in his career. Jeremy Allen White is also really strong in his own right as Kerry Von Erich. Really did embody the wilder aspects of the character and just his obsession, his drive that in a lot of ways enabled him to do some great, amazing things, even despite his injuries, but also led him to flaming out in the end. Harris Dickinson as David Von Erich. I also thought that was a really good performance. He had a lot of charisma, a lot of charm. The way that he said the promos was very charismatic, was very believable. You could really buy that he was a guy who lit up a room. You know, he had this larger than life personality, and it was very believable. It didn't feel like it was forced. That's not always easy to do. Maura Tierney and Holt McCallany as Doris and Fritz Von Erich. Both performances are equally as good to me. The mother, she's a little bit more understated, doesn't really have as much screen time as Fritz, but Maura still did a magnificent job in her own right, especially when it comes to just showing this character just completely be emotionally drained as the film goes on. She was a good representation of the audience and how they were feeling after tragedy after tragedy that just kept happening to this family. And Holt McCallany as Fritz Von Erich, he was fantastic in terms of just showing this hard ass, manipulative father figure. The man who, in a lot of ways, was responsible for that wrestling company being what it is. And for the Von Erich family being well known and being successful in wrestling. But he was also a reason for why so many of his sons ultimately wound up taking their own lives, not being safe or careful with their life decisions because of all of this pressure that he was constantly putting them under, which made them go to other avenues, go to other things in order to be able to alleviate the pressure and alleviate the pain that they're feeling because of what they're putting their body through and putting their mind through. And Holt really did a good job just playing that kind of role and making it in a way where it didn't come across like it was like cartoonishly villainous. Like it came across like it was very genuine and real, and that's what made it all the more infuriating, but in a good way, because that's really what makes that character work so well is because you're like, how can you not see it? How can you not see what you're doing? Can you not see your part in all of this? Just so oblivious because he's just so focused on one goal. And the goal isn't to keep his family together. The goal isn't to make sure that his family and his sons go on to live long and prosperous lives. No, his goal is for them to win and to win at all costs. And when that's your goal, sometimes the price you pay is something like this. And it winds up becoming a price that should not have been paid. Plus, I got to be honest, it was fun to see Sam Whitemoon from Creepshow 2 in a pretty big, well-known, at least a critically acclaimed movie. I mean, I love Creepshow 2, but it's not really on the same level. So it's nice to see Holt McCallany get some dues, so to speak. So I guess it just took him a long time. Had to cut the hair though. The hair wasn't what got him paid and laid. It was the Iron Claw. Lily James, I also thought she was just lovely and just a breath of fresh air, and I just really liked the way that she did her scenes with Zac Efron. The two had some really just amazing, just very effortless chemistry with one another. Like, you genuinely did buy that these two were madly in love with each other. Aaron Dean Eisenberg as Ric Flair. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what was going on with this casting. This was just a disaster. Like, the guy doesn't even look like Ric Flair, so that's already a problem. But then when he's trying to imitate Ric Flair, it's awful. It takes you out of the movie. Like, the movie did such a good job with the casting with these other wrestlers. And Ric Flair is such a magnetic, just insane personality that, yeah, I could see it would be a hard thing to recapture or to really get on the same level. But it's almost like they didn't even try. At least get somebody who's built like Rick. At least, you know, maybe physically look the part. So if his promos weren't necessarily as styling and as profiling and as electric as Rick's, then it might have been something that you could deal with a little bit better. But no, the guy didn't even look like Ric Flair at all. Didn't have the right physique. And the guy just seemed like he was just not owning the role. Like, you didn't feel like this is a guy who is Ric Flair. This was a guy who is just acting like Ric Flair. And it was a mess. Like, that is like the worst part of the movie, other than not including Chris. But other than that, like, the Ric Flair scenes, I mean, goddamn, it was bad. Like, the guy couldn't even do a convincing woo. Now, when it comes to the other technical aspects of the movie, I would say the film does secure a win with the cinematography by Matthias Ederle. Really matches well with the look and the overall feel and the tone visually that Sean Durkin wanted for the film. It's got some good editing by Matthew Hannum, especially when it comes to the wrestling scenes, or some nice, unique little edits here and there when it comes to the way that it transitions from one traumatic moment to the next, or just one scene to the next. Not even necessarily traumatic scenes. Sometimes scenes that are the opposite, scenes that are moments of joy or bliss. Just the way that those are edited is also very effective and very good in their own way in terms of what Hannum brings to the film with his editing. Now, the music by Richard Reed Parry, I think he's from Arcade Fire. It's not what I would say is the most memorable original score, but it fits for the vibe of the film and for what Sean had in mind when it comes to his vision for the movie. But really, what is the soundtrack to the film is not even really the original score, original music. It's classic songs from the era, from like the late 70s, early 80s. Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult. Thank God I'm a Country Boy by John Denver. Tom Sawyer by Rush, which was Kerry Von Erich's entrance music. And an original song that they wrote called Live That Way Forever. That was Mike's theme in a lot of ways. It was his song. And this song was so well put together, so well written, so finely crafted in pretty much every possible way that I was surprised that it wasn't already a well-known classic rock hit. Like when I found out later that that was an original song, I was just shocked, was speechless. I was like, that's an original song? That's not a classic rock song that I've heard a million times? They nailed it. It really, in a lot of ways, is the heart and soul of the film. There's a reason why it was used during the scene where the brothers reunite with each other in the afterlife, because it really does tap into just the core emotion of the movie. And that's what a good song does. It's a movie that really has a lot of soul to it, a lot of spirit, a lot of heart. At times it'll rip your heart out. But it's a movie that really, in a lot of ways, showcases what it means to be human, what it means to be flawed, what it means to be a brother, to be a part of a family, and just how important and vital all of that is, and how you can still persevere, you can still push through and find a way to build something great and make something out of your life, even if things are falling apart, even if it seems like the walls are closing in, even if it seems like you're cursed or your whole family is cursed. There's still a way where you can win. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the Iron Claw, and until next time, I'll see you later.